What is an arborist? How do you define safety on your crew? What is your strategy for selling tree work? Are trees sentient beings? And why wigs and aerial rescue do not mix. Through a mix of deep dives on individual subjects, getting out and field testing our equipment, and interviews with the people that make up our industry, Tree Thinking will answer these questions and many more as we try to understand the tree world around us on the Tree Thinking Podcast. All right, on this episode, it was a little bit of a smaller group. It was just me and Jamie, but we had a great conversation with Tom Dunlap. He had an awesome career, really affected our industry, and we got into all of that a little bit. So without further ado, we're going to take care of some business and then dive right into it. Hopefully you guys enjoy.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not, nor is it intended to be, a substitute for professional arboriculture advice and should never be relied upon to perform or direct arboricultural work. The Tree Thinking Podcast makes no representations as to the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of any information on this podcast and will not be liable for any damages arising from the use of any information in the practice of arboriculture or tree work. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guests, and their appearance on the podcast does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The podcast and its hosts are not to be held responsible for misuse, cited, and or uncited copies of the content within this podcast by others. The Tree Thinking Podcast may not be reproduced or distributed without the express written consent of the Tree Thinking Podcast.
Tom worked his first tree job at 12. While in college, he went on to start a 45-year career in the tree industry. In that time, he did everything from drag brush on the ground to climb in the canopy. His impact on the industry went next level, teaching arborist classes as a recreational and a professional tree climbing instructor. He helped introduce SRT to our industry and contributed to all of our safety, working on the ANSI Z133 committee. When the world went digital, he was on the ISA Discussion Forum. He got involved in one of the earliest arborist online communities as the co-founder of TreeBuzz.com. On this episode of Tree Thinking, we talk to an educator, an innovator, and a hard-working arborist who left the industry better than he found it. This week, we talk to Tom Dunlap. All right. So this week, we're doing something that we don't usually do. We're going to have a guest on to come on and just kind of talk about the career that he had and all the accomplishments we did. So, welcome, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, thanks. Nice to be on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. We kind of exchanged some information, and I got a little bit of information to make that intro. And as I was making it, I was like, man, this guy has done a lot for our industry.
Yeah, really influential.
Well, in the industry, when I think of the arc of my career and what I did, you know, where things were at when I was 12 and where they were at when I retired, it's a huge arc. We went through a huge amount of change through not just the modern arboriculture, but equipment and climbing, and now using digital communication. It is just stunning.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Just in the short time I've been in the industry, there's been a ton of innovation, like on the climbing side of things, with SRS and the rope walking things. I'm only 5.5 years in or so, and I've seen a huge difference, so I can imagine.
Let's start at the beginning. You started you did your first tree job at 12. How did you get roped into doing a tree job at 12?
The guy that lived next door to my folks when I was growing up was a lineman for the phone company, and he always had a side job. He had some part-time job. He had a little tree service, and his son and I were the same age and next door neighbors, so we were either best friends or worst enemies, depending on which way the wind was blowing. And so I don't know all the setup, but he needed some help on a Saturday in the summer, dragging brush and stacking brush. So he asked my folks if if I'd be interested in working, and of course I was. I mean, you're 12 years old in the summertime, you always want to have some money in your pocket. So Marv would go up the tree, climb up the tree to take this cottonwood down, and he'd cut the stuff, just bomb the branches out. And then Steve and I would drag the branches out to the street and use a bow saw and brush the stuff up and stack it on his little, I don't know, it was probably a 7 by 10 single axle trailer. We'd stack it up in piles. So that was the beginning. So,
oh wow,
sort of. That was the first time I ever made money doing tree work. I transplanted trees with my dad. We'd go out in the woods and dig trees out of the woods and plant them in the yard. So that goes back to when I was even younger.
Did your dad do tree work?
No. He was a bookkeeper and then worked for the post office, but very much an outdoors guy. You know, hunting and a little bit of fishing, and we were always camping and that stuff. So he was an outdoors guy, and he died about 10 years ago, and something I missed asking him is like, where did you learn all that stuff?
Oh yeah. Is this in Minnesota? Like you grew up there your whole life?
Yeah, I've spent all but 10 years of my life living in Minneapolis.
Okay. I'm from North Dakota, so it wasn't too far from you.
Yeah.
I hear the accent a little bit.
Yeah, I do too once in a while.
So when you were 12, was that a regular thing you did, or was that just 1 or 2 jobs here and there?
It was just really here and there.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work into a regular gig until more college year. I mean, I'd work with Marv every once in a while through high school and stuff. I went to the University of Minnesota for just traditional forestry for 5 quarters, and I started getting into tree work and doing landscaping, and started working for Marv a little more regularly. I wouldn't say full time at all, but it'd be just regularly then.
So what was your first like regular tree job? Like when did it become your career, I guess?
I worked for Marv sometime, it would have been in that time, college years. He had a helper, and the helper and I would go out and do some of the small jobs for him while he was off working for the phone company. Okay. So I think I was working 3-4 days a week for him in the summer.
Is that when you started climbing? Like when was the first time you climbed a tree?
Well, Marv was a rough and tough guy.
Yeah.
He was a hack as a tree guy in a way. So I had to unlearn a bunch of stuff that he taught me. But boy, I learned stuff from him, like stacking brush on that trailer on the first day.
Yeah.
He taught me how to stack brush. There's
chipper.
never been a better. Yeah. Well, no, for on the trailer.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but there's nobody has ever shown a better way of stacking brush.
Oh.
Even with the guys that, especially back in the day, that the hacks, they still had, they were running a business, they were doing something, and there's a lot to learn. One of my favorite quotes is old Bruce Lee quote, and he said, "Use what works, discard what doesn't, and add what is uniquely your own." And
yep.
And there's a lot you can take from just somebody that works hard, just learning, especially when you're first starting, just learning that work ethic.
Yeah, and Marv taught me some good stuff. Is just not wasting time. Just really good foundational stuff. If you're walking from the backyard to the front yard, you never go empty-handed. You're always bringing something.
Yeah.
Those sort of principles that we still instill and try to get new hires to pick up.
How much do you think you took from Marv and kept teaching throughout your career? How much of that information do you think you were teaching for 45 years?
Oh, I found myself teaching stuff and hearing Marv come out of my mouth with different things. He's a mentor of mine, both how to do stuff and how not to do stuff.
Yeah.
But he didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing in the industry. So it wasn't his fault that he was topping trees. He thought that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we were talking to Dan a few episodes ago, and he was talking about how he was spurring trees when he first started. and he's one of the best climbers I've seen climb. But you just start where you start, and you just do your best to get better from there.
Yeah, and he talked about spurring just the tiniest trees, and it didn't really make sense. They're the most cumbersome thing, but that's just what you did. That's how you did it. Kind of like topping trees, a while back.
Well, a buddy of mine, some people know Tony Sackett, had the best definition of a hack. It's a person who does the wrong thing after they know it's wrong.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a hack.
Yeah.
If you don't know it's wrong, well, you get a little forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah. Plead ignorance.
Yeah. You don't know, but once you know something's wrong, you should stop doing it, or you're a hack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marv's working up in this tree this one day, and I kind of have this vague memory of it, looking on the ground. And I climbed trees when I was a kid, and we built tree houses and stuff, but not, of course, like he did, putting spikes on in a saddle and hanging from a rope. But he's up in this tree, and I looked up there, and I thought, you know what? I want to do that. I want to be up there too.
Yeah.
Not just get out of doing groundwork, but I wanted that. I wanted to be there. And so I knew, because of the kind of guy he was, that if I would have blurted to him that day, when we were done and stacked up and cleaned up and on the way home, if I would have said, hey, I want to start to climb, I would have gotten the biggest dismissal, you punk.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all know that guy that thinks that, it's like, no, you're not worthy. So I shut up and I started watching him. I started really paying attention. I started second guessing. We'd stop and go, okay, well, we got to take off that one limb. And then in my head, I'd go, oh, we're going to need these saws. We're going to need this equipment. And I would have it before he called for it.
Oh, man. Next level ground guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I start, and we were working just part-time, 2 days, 2 evenings a week in the summer, and maybe a Saturday. And after doing this for, I don't know, sometimes 2-3 weeks, we're driving back at the end of the day in the pickup. He said, you want to start climbing? And I didn't cackle or anything, because that would have been another shutdown.
Uh-huh.
I said, yeah. He says, I noticed you've been really on. You've been right there for all the stuff. And I said, oh yeah. I kind of played dumb, and but that worked. That got me noticed, and he started teaching me, and I can remember the first tree I took down. And
yeah, I think that's still how it is. I mean, you can tell a new hire when they got that spark in their eye, and then you can be like, okay, the bid's good. We got plenty of time. Are you interested in climbing? And then, maybe they play dumb like you did. Or maybe they're like, oh, yeah. Yeah.
How long did it take from when you started working with him, or, from when you were working with him regularly to when he, offered to let you climb?
Well, it'd been in the summer when I first started climbing, and it probably wasn't until the next summer, because we're just working. He's working full time at the phone company,
right? Yeah.
And so we're doing work in the evening until dusk in the summer, and then in the winter we just work on a Saturday here and there. It was, and I was going to school and stuff, so it was a calendar year before. He'd give me jobs and I'd do them on my own. So it was a calendar year.
That's what I've always told people is when they're first starting out and they start wanting to climb, I always say, work the ground for a year. It's going to take that long. I mean, you can climb. I have no doubt that you could learn the knot and you can move around the tree, but just fully understanding the workflow. And like you're saying, understanding what tool needs to come next. You learn a lot about climbing from working the ground. And everybody's different. A lot of people are ready to go before that year. But I always say that's a good kind of benchmark.
Yeah, and to learn incrementally, somebody that, and again, what I did was, I learned how to teach. I'm not a teacher. I'd taken an odd class here and there about teaching and stuff, but I don't have a background, classroom background as a teacher. But, picking up stuff that, teaching somebody like Steve and I dragging brush when we were 12, and we had a bow saw.
Yeah.
And Marv told us, when we're cutting the brush off, the log pieces don't leave stubs,
Uh-huh.
even for stacking brush. They get in the way, they snag and stuff like that. So, he taught us how to handle a saw and how to make. We weren't making collar cuts, obviously, but
Uh-huh.
not to leave a stub on a piece of firewood, and learn how to use a handsaw and stuff like that. And then obviously then it comes to, using a chainsaw for brushing and then a chainsaw on the tree.
One of the things that I love about our industry is it gives a way for people to get into the industry that might not be the college student that got a degree and went on, that Marv took his time to teach you and his son a skill that you turned into a career for 45 years. That kind of stuff is invaluable. And that's one of those things that, the world needs, is that whole mentorship and people working with each other that way. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm very grateful to him for that.
where'd your career go after that?
I went to a technical college for 2 years for landscape design and construction.
Okay.
And because I was doing some landscaping and stuff, so I did that. And it was still working with Marv a little bit here and there, doing some tree work and doing some landscape jobs. And then one winter I was working for a tree service, and the guy, he didn't know anything about trees, but he somehow got this idea that he could make a bunch of money doing tree work.
Uh-huh.
And so he mortgaged his house, bought equipment in September with no work ahead of him.
Oh.
Yeah. And not a good businessman. It's like, that's not the time to start being an arborist or do a tree work.
That's a Minnesota September.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I worked for him and, I got paid. He never stiffed me on a check or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that with the little I knew about tree work and the business, that if he could make money, I could make money. And so a buddy of mine and I started up the business. I was in February of '79.
Okay.
That's when I started the company. I started Canopy. It was Canopy Tree Service at the time in February of '79.
That's interesting. The company I started with was also named Canopy. It's like a common name in the tree industry, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
Great name. So what'd you start out with? Just a truck and a trailer?
Yeah, I had a 3/4 ton pickup with a shell on it for putting the gear and stuff in the back, and then I had a pickup body trailer that I bought for
Oh yeah.
I don't know, $100, so, and then just we'd gradually, we'd work and save, take a couple of bucks for living and save up some money, and, gradually bought some machinery, a little chassis, and put a dump box on it, and bought a chipper, and so we gradually built up.
So you got the landscape architect degree from the technical school, right? Did you get a degree from the University of Minnesota as well?
No, I went there for 5 quarters. I was just doing the basic classes. I didn't really have any forestry. I had a few little forestry classes, but nothing. I hadn't gotten into the core curriculum really.
Yeah, no, I did. When I got out of high school, I knew I was going to be an arborist. As you know, it's my family business is tree work, and so I went to school for a little bit because that's kind of what you're supposed to do when you get out of high school, but I never took it serious because I knew where my future held.
Yeah.
How much do you think you used your degrees in your career?
Looking back, there was even a little bit of time at the University of Minnesota. There were things that I used. I took a surveying class, and I've used that. A few other different things. I had an economics class that has been absolutely invaluable. A lot of classes at the technical college, especially when I was doing landscaping, but even without doing landscaping, learning plant identification and, how plants grow and how to plant stuff and things like that. I used a lot of that information there.
Yeah, I wish I had taken it more serious, kind of looking back, the hindsight view. I know a couple people that went to UMass and got their degree in arboriculture there, and it's obviously set them on a good road. Just really smart individuals that know so much about trees.
How large? Like, what was the size of your company when you got out of it?
For most of my career, it was just one crew,
Okay.
2 or 3 helpers. I had a couple summers where I'd have 2 crews, but the summers that I did that, the second crew were buddies of mine that were good workers. They were looking for work, and so you just put work in front of them, and they could figure it out. I didn't have to, all I had to do was teach them, how to run chainsaws, a little bit about the equipment, the nuts and bolts stuff. As far as getting a job done, I just leave them on the job, and I knew it would be handled just fine.
Okay.
So that made it easy because I didn't have to worry about, are they goofing off? Are they wrecking things? You take all that stuff as like, this is the job. Do this.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too hard running 2 crews, but I realized that 2 crews would eat up so much work. I would have to be out selling.
Oh yeah.
And then if things would slow down, I kind of had this. I always felt an obligation to my crew to keep them working. So if work would slow down, I'd have to drop my prices a little bit, to keep those numbers going. And then I wasn't making any money, but I was making payroll and all that stuff. And I just realized, I want a 1 crew company.
Yeah.
And so that worked for me.
Okay, so that's kind of how you kept it, just 1 crew running.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing for people. I've seen tree guys struggle with it, about knowing when to grow their business, because it's so tempting. It's like, oh, if I just hire that 1 more person, we'll be able to get that much more work done. But it makes your company so much more vulnerable for the in the lean times, and the responsibilities really start going tenfold, like you say, when you have multiple crews and you're juggling more clients. And it's always been one of those interesting things for me. At what point do you pull the trigger and grow, and at what point do you just say, hey man, I'm comfortable right here?
Yeah, and especially in Minneapolis, we're right now, we're having a more normal winter. We've got a couple of weeks of the high temperatures that are negative single digits.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
That's our high temperatures.
Yeah, I remember that stuff.
Yeah, you can work.
No.
But it's just, dealing with machinery and production is low and all that sort of stuff. And you got to deal with it every year. And it's just rough. It's hard to keep going when you have the weather like that.
Yeah. What'd you do in the off season?
Well, we still keep plugging away. But,
Okay.
Work would come in to a certain extent, but hardly, it was barely, for my crew, it was like almost the tipping point between unemployment or work. And we would work enough that they made just a little bit more working than being on unemployment.
Right.
Yeah, my dad worked in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I think I was probably 8 years old at the time. And I remember going and visiting him in the winter and just being like, what the heck is going on? As a kid from Eugene, Oregon, where winters were rainy, they were wet. It was definitely wintertime. But just seeing the snowbanks on the side of the road, it was, you were going to a whole different land.
Yep.
I loved it. I love being able to play hockey like it was a pickup game of basketball, though. As a kid that played hockey here, is like, there's hockey going on the corner here, you know?
Yeah. So winters were, a real challenge to have to deal with that. That, definitely that bell curve of work, like a farmer, anybody that's doing seasonal stuff. So, but I had work coming in, but just not very regular.
It seems like at some point in your career, you kind of took a turn. You went from you're probably running a business the whole time, but you kind of took that next level to working on with ANSI and being a bigger part of the industry. What what kind of brought along that change, and how did that all go down? Because it's amazing all the different ways that you influence the industry, and that's one of the things that kind of stood out to me that I'd love to hear about.
Well, in 1986, I went to the first national trade show. It was called Arbor Expo. Old Arbor Age magazine had it, and it was a predecessor to now what TCIA's Expo is. It was that same sort of format. And so I went to that, and I was completely blown away with the introduction to what the rest of the world of arboriculture was like, and the trade show and the speakers, and I got to meet Don Blair and Bob Weber and other different people that have been lifelong buddies, and seeing like, whoa, that's what it's about. And so I learned the value of going to the workshops and getting a little more involved in the profession. And I was at some session, I don't remember what it was, but and I'd heard Dr. Shigo speak a few times, as a keynote, and I'm sitting there, and again, it was like when I wanted to climb, start climbing with Marv. I'm sitting there going, I want to do that. I want to know one, and people say, yeah, you just want to be up there on the podium and have people, like this God. And I go, no, that's not it. I wanted to know enough that I had created a value and I could teach it. Yeah. That's what I wanted to do. And so I started really buckling down and learning, reading books and going to sessions and really putting a lot of time into learning. And then any opportunity I could get, to do a free class, a tree class of pruning shrubs or trees at a garden club or, the Hort Society or anything like that, I'd start doing it for free and then, gradually work my game up to start charging a few bucks. And so again, incremental, just like I did with climbing. Started, crossing paths with people because of that, and opportunities arose because of that.
Speaking of crossing paths with people, what was it like to see Shigo speak? He's been such a founder and a lot of really good knowledge. And me and Jamie actually are preparing a presentation, a PowerPoint, and a lot of the information is from him. What was he like as a presenter?
Amazing. It was the first time you ever hear somebody that is really smart, and he was, say, I don't know, but I'll get it for you. I mean, it puts you back in your chair. It's one thing to sit around the conversation, with the trade show floor with a bunch of people in a circle and go, you know what, I don't know anything about that. But to hear somebody like him say, I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you.
Yeah.
Just amazing. And having taken, I took his 5-day class here. He came to the cities and did a class here. That was the final shift between this character I either call him Hack Tom or Evil Tom. It's like, oh, I can't do that stuff anymore. Now I know I have to do it the right way. So very patient. Yeah, just a great educator.
Yeah, it's amazing the influence that he's had on the industry. A legitimate impact on science. I mean, that is not something everybody can say.
Right. Yeah, and to have had the opportunity to see him many times over my career.
So what was your first big speaking job, and what was that like?
I guess the big one that I do remember, I was asked to speak at Expo when I was in Milwaukee. That was the first real big one. Oh no, wait a minute. One before that. I was on my own at that one, and it was going to be like, one of those 250, 300 people. But before that, Kim Coder was doing 2 different sessions, and I got asked to do a 20-minute talk between his sessions. And so everybody was there to see Kim, and I'm kind of the throwaway band in the middle. And then Kim did his other talk. So I had a built-in audience there, and it was like, whoa. I had, friends of mine tell me later that, that it did a nice job, that the presentation was put together well, and the information actually was stuff that I put together and did a good job with it. So that was the first big one I did.
And you like you said, you built yourself up incrementally, so was it like this huge shock to you to have a larger crowd like that, or was it felt okay for you to be up there?
I had learned to get over the stage fright part of it, because starting off, doing these free classes and stuff like that, I got to try that and learned how to put together a presentation, and the presentations got longer and more complex, and the audience, since I'm speaking to my peers, I needed to be ahead of the game. Not that I was presenting new stuff, not like Dr. Shigo would, but new for a lot of people. I'd go to the national conferences and then reteach that stuff to people that didn't go there, that sort of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. When I've taught classes, I hate sitting up in front of a classroom and talking to a bunch of people. Honestly, it's part of the reason I decided I want to do a podcast, because I need to get better at talking to people, and this is a way where I'm talking to people, and it's just finding ways to do it. But what I found was, it was a pruning class where we did half of it. It was a in classroom in class, and then the other half we went out into the field. And when I was up in front of people in the class, I was, really stiff and having a hard time. And then we get outside, I put a hard hat on, I have a pole saw in my hand, and next thing you know, I'm just talking to a crew. Yeah. And all that anxiety went away. It just, and it was amazing to realize for me, like, wait a second, it's just like, it's all in my head. Like, just flip that switch. You're just talking to a bunch of tree guys, or, a bunch of tree people, and, just talk to them. They're all into the same thing you're into, and you're going to be wrong about stuff, and you're going to teach some stuff, and that's just how it goes.
Exactly. Yeah. So that stuff, that was fun. And, and gradually meeting people, and with meeting Tim Walsh and becoming friends with him, and starting doing educator stuff with him. And he ended up getting a seat on the Z133 committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the alternate. So I'd start going to the Z meetings as the alternate for the Student Society of Arboriculture. And then things changed, and I ended up getting a seat on the Z as I can't think of what they call it, what my title was. It was like unaligned, or I didn't represent any entity. All I was there as an arborist. I wasn't representing my company. I always told people, I'm there to represent the boots in the field.
Uh-huh.
People that don't have a voice. I'm not representing a manufacturer, the insurance company, management. I'm there to make sure that the people that are actually out there having to do follow the rules that we're making, so that they have a voice. Because everybody, we're not enemies with management, but management has a way of doing stuff, and the rope experts and saddle manufacturers, they've got their thing. Well, somebody needs to speak for the workers.
Yeah. There's a disconnect there. You were kind of there to bridge that gap.
Right. And I bring stuff up that, I wasn't the only one, of course, that
mm-hmm.
that did that, but that's all I did.
How long did you sit on the is it the board of ANSI? How long did you work for ANSI? However you phrase that.
Well, I was on the committee for. I should sit. I've tried to figure that out, but probably about 20 years. I think.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it, but it was probably about 20 years from the Student Society of Arboriculture to when I retired. Well, I stepped down because, it's like, there's time for somebody else to take over.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, obviously I haven't abandoned and gone, become a hermit or anything like that. But it was time for somebody, a working arborist, and somebody who was working to become involved.
How long were you in the industry before you got on the board or on the committee?
I would say probably 25, maybe 30 years in or so.
Interesting. So it was about half your career. How do you think that
somewhere around there? Yeah.
how do you think that changed the way you look at safety, working in the field, being on that board or on that committee?
The committee. Yeah. It really probably didn't change what I did so much, because I was probably doing what became the Z. I was probably doing all of that stuff before it was in the Z.
Yeah.
That was just because it was a normal thing, and it took me a while. I didn't wear a helmet when I was in the beginning in the career. I always wore safety glasses, but I didn't always wear a helmet. I wore a helmet and earmuffs when I was chipping, but not running a chainsaw, that sort of stuff. So, but the light bulb went off like, hey, bonehead, get a helmet.
Did Marv wear a helmet?
No. Are you kidding?
I was just kidding. Yeah.
Isn't it funny that once you adopt a piece of safety equipment, when you're the guy that doesn't wear a helmet and you start wearing it, how then if you work a job without a helmet, you're like, no, this is unacceptable.
Yeah,
you feel naked. It's like, what am I doing? And then you think, I did that for years.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that with my chainsaw pants now.
Yeah.
You show up for a pruning gig or whatever, you still feel weird in the tree, even with your handsaw and not having my chainsaw pants on, just because I wear them every day.
I've noticed the same thing. I always wore a hard hat, but when I first started climbing, we didn't have, I wasn't wearing one of the Petzls with the chin strap. I just had the full brim hard hat. And, for whatever reason, that stayed on my head. The only time it came off is, every blue moon it would fall off for whatever reason. Now I can't, if I don't have a chin strap clipped on, it just feels so unstable up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's normalized. So I was already doing that stuff in my company before it was really, written in the Z. So it wasn't changing, but some of the, just adding insights when we'd be discussing stuff about, somebody would come up with ideas of that weren't practical, and they seem their ideas were brought up at the Z that were brought up in all sincerity by people that don't climb. They're involved in the industry but they don't climb, and we go, that's really not practical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The idea is good, but that won't work. Don't take offense that we're not punching you or anything like that, or discounting what you're saying, but the way you want to do that, that's just not practical. To mandate something.
I remember having a similar discussion around chaps. I was talking to somebody that thought we should wear chaps in trees, and this is before there were chap pants, so it'd be like the clip-on chaps. And I remember being like, no, we don't need to wear chaps in trees. And now technology is caught up and we have chap pants, and I'm thankful we do, because, it adds a layer of safety and it's really not that much more. But I try to kind of, play devil's advocate in my head. But me and Jamie were talking a while ago about an article where they're talking about having 2 tie-in points as far as 2 climbing lines being tied in twice. And my first reaction was like, that's crazy. It's going to be such a pain in the butt. But then I did it, and it was like, all of a sudden I started finding these benefits to it. And I'm not saying I do it on every job by any means, but I remember being like, all right, well, all right, think this through. Don't just have your knee-jerk reaction. Actually try it before you start criticizing it. And trying it, I was like, well, now I'm ascending, and if I want to just cut a branch, I just tighten both the knots. I don't have to then lanyard in. And, there's all these benefits that I didn't see coming that I started finding.
Yeah, those are both perfect examples of the way things have moved along. For years, people would go to that. When chaps became mandated for chainsaw use on the ground, people would say, well, and people should wear them in the trees. And it's like, well, no, one, and we rely on Dr. Ball's statistics and his research and stuff like that, and other experiences. Is like people aren't getting cut with chainsaws. They're not cutting their legs in the trees, so there's not a need for that protection. Is one, and two, they're the pants, buckling them. You're going to be snagging on thick stuff. You create a danger. But like you say, with the materials and the sewing and the cost, now cut resistant pants they're comfortable. They're not uncomfortable to wear, even at some threshold of 90 degrees, 95 degrees.
Yeah.
You do get to be 95, 100 degrees. Anything is hot.
Yeah.
Anything is hot. So now you have to, you're going to have somebody wearing chainsaw pants at 100 degrees. Well, you just need to up your annotation of that. It's like if somebody's climbing with pants, okay, you need to make sure that you're checking them, make sure they're hydrating, you're taking breaks, doing that sort of stuff. But at one time, it's like, no, it's just not practical. It's going to create a hazard.
Saw pants are like the norm now. It's not like an enforced safety thing, but like everyone I know, it's just they got them. It's kind of a cool thing, at least up here.
Yeah, and it's as we any place when you drive down the street to see what kind of enrollment you have in that with tree crews. Whether it's the municipal crews, state highway department, private crews, the landscapers, and you just kind of you're driving along. Everybody does it. You look and you go, are they wearing helmets?
Yeah.
Do they have caps on?
Yeah.
And you start seeing more and more landscape crews that are decked out. They're wearing helmets and chaps and stuff. So that's good.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Another really interesting part of your career is how it adapted as there was new technology and whatnot that I've always thought was kind of cool. How you got into Tree Buzz and then the ISA Arborists Discussion Forum before that. How did that all come about?
Well, I had read about the ISA forum in Arborist News, and I read about it for a while. I didn't have internet at the time even, and so I got the internet and I started seeing, poking around and seeing what was going on, and then I thought, I should sign up and get in and register and be on that, and I did, and the very early, I was on probably months after it opened, the ISA discussion forum got going, and saw the potential for that, and people just getting on and chatting, and the camaraderie, and developing friendships and sharing ideas, and understanding that how my buddy up in Toronto, the problems he had isn't any different than I'm listening to somebody in San Diego.
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff. So that was fun to see that everybody had the same issues, and I'm making friends online. And then meeting those people.
For me, it was when the internet came around, and I just got a little bit of like the pre-internet, pre-cell phone arborist world. I started in 98. And so when I first started, you didn't know any of the other crews in town. And, you would drive by them, and, you kind of wave, kind of scowl at each other because they were the competition. They weren't, it was a total different energy. And then all of a sudden you get on social media and you start realizing these people do the same thing you do. All the things that you do that you think you're so cool because you can do it, they're doing the exact same thing, and there's tons of other people doing it too. Yeah. And it just, this wall goes down, and you're like, oh, hey, how's it going?
And you drive by hanging out the window. Hey, what's up?
Yeah, exactly. From that point of view, it's been great. But I'll tell you what, the pre-cell phone era of being a tree guy was pretty awesome. Not nobody could call you and harass you. You just pick up your work orders and you go do your jobs. There's something pretty nice about that.
Yeah, yeah, and that connection, solving problems. I remember many times when my brother started working full time as an arborist. He was a campus arborist at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and he'd call me from up in the tree. He had something like he'd discuss a problem with a rigging thing or where should I make a cut, a directional cut or something like that. He'd be up in the tree talking, and who knows where I'd be out doing tree work, but we'd be talking on the phone solving problems. So it's pretty cool
That's
to have
awesome.
that tool.
Yeah.
But now even more with phones or cameras, be able to, the FaceTime issue of being able to talk about stuff.
Oh yeah. Actually show them what's going on.
I've done wildlife trees where, I was like, all right, what do I want to do with this? And I just open up Google and Google, broken treetops. And it, come up with 100 different pictures of broken treetops and be like, I'll see if I can't recreate that.
Yeah.
It's definitely opened up the world in a lot of ways. It's much better that we got the technology, but there's something nice about not being harassed by the boss when you're out working.
Yeah. So Tree Buzz makes that happen, like that phone call from your brother down in Texas, right? That's kind of like you get off work, maybe you had an issue, then you can go on Tree Buzz and see someone else has had this issue and you guys can have a chat about it. It's really cool. Or, ask questions, answer questions. It's a really cool thing you started.
Yeah, and that's close to 20 years ago.
Okay.
You want to tell us the story of how it started?
Well, it was, I think it was in December of that Mark gave me a call. And Mark and I had known each other, going to competitions and stuff like that. And I wouldn't say friends, but we were good buddies. We knew who each other were. I mean, everybody knows Mark and stuff like that, but so we chatting and stuff like that. We knew each other. And so he calls me up and says, I was thinking about starting this discussion forum. And he knew that I was active on the ISA forum. Not as a moderator or anything like that. That was all handled by ISA, but they were hands-off sort of moderation. So, but I was involved in ISA, and he says, would you want to be part of it? And I said, well, yeah. I was kind of confused because, okay, I'm in Minneapolis, you're in Jersey. How do we do this? And he said, well, we'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that December through the winter, we started having more discussions about, he was working with somebody with the tech part of it, the building the website and doing all of that, the computer side of it, the behind the screen. And we'd have discussions, we'd chat once in a while about what did we want this to be? What did we want it to look like? And kind of a mission statement sort of a thing. And it's interesting, and Mark and I talk about this. We have a good laugh about how Tree Buzz has followed that model that we had from the beginning.
What was like the mission statement of Tree Buzz? Like,
share whatever you want, and don't be a jerk.
Yeah. Is there much of that? I've scrolled through. I've been on there a handful of times, and I don't see that too often.
No.
Yeah, it's a great community.
Yeah, and especially on in the off topic, it's off topic,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a little bit of moderation going on. Some people they run away with themselves a little too much.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much whatever you go is an off topic. But the rest of the stuff is like, don't be jumping on people. Don't be clubbing them to death. There's no need to do that.
Yeah, that's what Facebook's for.
Well, that's it. And I'll tell somebody if, that isn't what you do in Tree Buzz.
Yeah.
We have an expectation that you can say what you want, but don't be mean.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a jerk. We do have those limits, and I'll do that, with a private message.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely, and we've had to boot a few people, not very many in 20 years. But it's been interesting to see how the activity level of tree buzz has changed as social media has gone up, and it definitely, because it's a different sort of a medium, it isn't growing, but it's not fading away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'd mentioned, I'd been on there a handful of times, but I kind of got into this industry with social media being huge, so I'm definitely more on, Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. So I see what you're saying there, how that stuff exploded, and a lot of people who are just getting into it, that's kind of the easier thing. They might not know about tree buzz.
How much?
Right.
How much are you into the into Instagram or kind of the social media tree world?
I don't do Instagram, and I follow a few Facebook tree-related pages.
I would recommend it, if you're interested. If you don't want nothing to do with it, hats off to you. I can respect that. I really appreciate Instagram more than I do Facebook, and I think you get less negativity there just because it's people sharing cool pictures rather than people kind of getting into the weeds and getting opinionated on random stuff. I don't know. What do you think, Jamie?
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I started on Instagram, right, learning all this stuff, and then I activated my Facebook. I'm like, whoa, this is a whole different world. It's kind of
intense at times.
I've heard it described as a dumpster fire, and I think,
yeah,
like I said earlier, the opposite of tree buzz.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what's your role in tree buzz now? Do you still operate it? What are you doing with it?
Well, I'm a moderator.
Okay.
So I'm the janitor. Mark, because Mark is busy with, working for Aspen and his many hats he wears at Aspen.
Yeah, he seems like a
he's
busy
got
guy.
a family and kids, all his speaking stuff. So he's busy. He isn't very active on the, screen time with Tree Buzz, but he does. He gets on there.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, I sometimes end up being, I liken it to the junior high principal. That sometimes I got to be the mean guy.
Yeah.
And just watch over stuff if I have to.
Yeah.
I don't like that, but sometimes I have to. Things get a little, some people aren't nice.
Well, whatever you're doing is working because it's been a positive community on the internet. If you can create a positive community, you're doing something right.
Yeah, you're doing good. Well, that speaks to the community, the arborist community too.
That's true.
Yeah.
That being said, on Facebook, it is the arborist community, and they lit a dumpster fire.
Yeah. Well, and the value too of having 20 years of discussion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
To refer to, there's a current thread about the face shields on cast helmets.
Uh-huh.
And people are talking about scratches, of course, but cleaning them. Well, and I was like, I want to learn about this. Like, what about that? Well, so Google pulls up a couple of threads, and they're tree buzz threads. When you're asking, it's like, wow.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's like I'm not doing anything to jiggle and put to give vote count to Google or anything like that. I wouldn't have a clue how to do that.
Yeah.
It just Google has learned that there's some threads that have the answer. So having 20 years of archived knowledge is very valuable to people, I think.
That's
so. There's nothing. I would have a very hard time finding anything to refer to off of any Facebook.
Yeah, that's so cool. 20 years archived there. Like any question you have, you may find it already being talked about, or someone's going to hop on there and answer it for you.
Right. Right.
And all that information going all the way back, it's still on there. Do you get rid of information at any point, or is it all archived there?
No, we don't delete anything.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So if you're someone getting into this industry, imagine the head start you have to go to Tree Buzz and answer 20 years worth of information, boom, in your lap.
Yeah, you can have.
Yeah, and people will get on and they'll say, when they finally go public, and somebody will say, I joined 6 months ago, and I spend, when I come home from work, before dinner, I always spend at least a half hour reading a thread. And so people have gone through the archive and spent some time learning about stuff before they actually say, hey, I'm Tom. I'm doing tree work at this little company in Minneapolis. A lot of people have already been on and educated themselves through whatever, is there on Tree Buzz. So that's nice. I'm glad that Mark had that vision and we brought it to life, and we've had sponsors that found value and participants that found value and shared so much amazing information.
Yeah, well, I'm one of them. I haven't actually put any input on there, but I've been on there quite a few times, just looking at pictures or reading threads or whatnot. And if you haven't checked out Tree Buzz, go check it out. There's great information there. I kind of wanted to get your opinion also on mentorship. We talked a little bit about Marv, and that's obviously one of your mentors. But I think that's such a big thing in our industry these days, is being able to mentor people and kind of spread that knowledge. What do you have to say about mentorship? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I've had some great mentors that, not that I went to them, but I found them after a time to have the patience and guide me, or somebody I can tap into for information, and a role model, and to be able to, for the friends to share with me, and also with being a mentor to other people that I've crossed paths with. And people will, some people I don't see very often or I don't hear from, but, every once in a while they pop up and, with a question about something or just to chit chat. So yeah, to have that family connection, it's a nice feeling.
Yeah. It's some of my proudest moments in the industry has been seeing somebody that I helped and, took the time to teach them a little bit, and then see them take that and just build upon it and do really well. That's always been something I've been proud of when I've had the opportunity and been lucky enough to kind of have that relationship.
Yeah, I'm forever thankful and grateful for my mentors, and I love, every time I can pass something on, and I take every opportunity I can to share my knowledge. We're getting to about an hour, huh? Already, that kind of flew by.
Yeah, we just hit an hour.
Just to kind of be respectful for your time, maybe we'll get into more stuff, but I want to talk about tree climbing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you down with that?
Yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, I've got we've kind of hit the points that I wanted to hit, but that doesn't mean we got to be done.
Oh, yeah. Well, we just got a question, what was your evolution as a climber?
Yeah, the harness that Marv had was kind of a modified pole climber's harness. Basically, it was real similar to a 4D butt strap saddle, and 3-strand hemp rope, pole spikes, and you just monkey fist the rope up into the tree if you can. And other times, you can't get a tree. We didn't have throw bags and throw lines. They were, at the beginning, I didn't know about them, but then I found out about them but didn't use them. But we'd be doing elm takedowns, and you get up to that, you're 20, 30 feet up with a long lanyard or your climbing rope, but you get to that first limb and you got to take the lanyard off. Instead of grabbing another rope and being smart about it and throwing another rope over them, no, you take the lanyard off, and now you're just poking your pole spikes through the bark.
And just holding on.
Just holding on,
yeah.
Skinnying up over this big elm limb, wondering, am I going to fall and kill myself?
Yeah.
To the, crossing paths with, throw line and, and using rock climbing techniques and, a little, along the line of what we're doing now. So there's been an evolution, and getting into getting out of using natural fiber ropes, manila and tree strand, and getting into arborplex and beyond. Much safer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I heard a podcast recently with Reg Coates, and he talked about when you're just like spur climbing with just a lanyard, like you were saying before. He said there was almost a stigma to getting and setting like a top rope to like do the work. He's like, I just kind of had to just cut as you gone up, like you were looked at funny if you tried to do otherwise. Did you experience that?
Well, I didn't, because after I started my company, I wasn't working with Marv very much.
Okay.
And so I was just working by myself, and I had learned, a taut line hitch and, double rope technique and that. So I didn't have any kind of peer stuff, like working for another company with other climbers, other than people that I would learn from. So I learned, how people were climbing at the time. So I didn't have that. I did, and I know we're eventually will get, the segue into SRT.
Mm-hmm.
When that happened, oh boy, let me tell you, I got the flack then.
Yeah.
I think the first time I met you, you would come to Eugene. You might have been teaching some climbers at the airport here, some people that took care of the trees, single rope, and so you came by Sperry, and we did some single rope. And at Sperry, we were pretty far ahead of the game at Sperry, so we were already climbing single rope. But it was cool to see somebody come in that had a few extra tips to teach us, and then the realization, like, this is what this guy does, is he goes around teaching people how to climb. And yeah, that kind of changed the way I looked at what you could do in the industry. One of the things from that class that I still talk about is how you always had pink gear. All your gear was pink. And that was that way you could you knew what was yours. I'll do the same thing if I have a choice now. I buy the pink carabiner or the pink rope for that same reason.
Yeah.
That's funny. I have a pink throw cube, and Andrew's told me that story. I didn't realize that was you.
Yep, that was Tom.
Oh, wait, that you got my throw cube?
Yeah, I've had that cube for a long time now.
Found it at a pawn shop.
Oh yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah, that stuff. When I started muddling around with SRT and looking at it and going, and I would say SRT is the future of tree climbing.
Oh yeah.
And I would just, after a while, I would just, I got such from certain factions. I got such backlash from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was being a heretic. I was like, what? I didn't know what to do with the reaction. Like, why this reaction? What if why? I'm not saying anything. It's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
What's your stake in it?
Yeah.
I just and to see that, the evolution of SRT, and now with, like we were talking before, with the true double rope, the 2-rope or twin rope system that they've established in the UK. It's taken it another step.
Yeah. How did you get introduced into single rope?
I was at a buddy's house. He was renting a room at another friend of ours' house, and Steve was a caver, and
Okay.
so I'm looking in his library and at his caving books, and I pulled off the first edition of On Rope. I pulled it off the shelf and started reading through it, and I go, wow, there's a lot of really good information here. And so I went down to the bookstore and bought the first edition and devoured it and looked at it and go, oh, that's how they climb in caves, how they ascend and descend. And I could look at that and go, wow. Because by then we were using throw lines, and throw bags. And I was like, oh, well, we could do that. Use that in trees. It just made perfect sense. It was just a natural segue to take that stuff for ascending and descending in trees. So I started doing that. And so that was sometime in I think it's the early 90s is when, I think the second edition of On Rope came out in 95. So it was just before that, because I bought the first edition and then bought the second edition. So it puts it someplace in the early 90s. And to just use it as a scent. It's like what it's become now is single up, double down, and that's what I would do. And then I realized, then we had a storm where I'm going up and doing pick pruning, just going a couple of broken limbs. So I do single up, knock out these couple of limbs and single down.
Okay.
And then it's like the steps along the way, and trying to find hitchers that I could do a single rope with, because that was the bugaboo, to find something that would go up and down.
Yeah.
Couldn't find that, and then I crossed paths the day that Morgan Thompson introduced the Unisender at Expo in Long Beach. I was there and met Morgan, and it was like, this is it.
Yeah, I remember.
Did that come before the rope wrench? The
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw Unisender was at the Rendezvous when you were I think you taught a course there, or a little class there on different climbing techniques, the Rendezvous in Grants Pass. And I saw that Unisender and I was like, what is that? What do you mean up and down? Mind blown.
I know.
And I ended up getting one. It took me a couple years because they were pretty expensive at the time, and it was a bit of a financial commitment. But for years, probably 8 years after I got that, I used it. I still have it. I actually now have it with my captain's hook, because I have a Rope Runner Pro, and they got the rope wrench, and so I don't really need that Unisender anymore. But it's got a soft spot in my heart. It's one of those pieces of gear I've just had for so long, and it's perfect for the rope wrench to hold the slack on it. Yeah, that was one of those moments in my climbing career. But, it's interesting. You were saying earlier that you used to get flack on single rope. And now, as somebody, I'll still climb double rope if it makes sense. People will almost make fun of the fact that I'm climbing double rope. And,
I know.
And it's like, what happened here? The tables have turned. And in my mind, it's just two different tools in a toolbox. I mean, you should be proficient at single and proficient at double. And that's, the more you know, the better. But that's kind of funny how things go full circle that way.
Yeah, it is. It is. And instead of it just being another tool, it's another solution. But a good climber should be proficient at that. If you learn first on double rope or single rope, whatever, that's chatter. I have an opinion on that. Other people have other opinions. I'm not going to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
But a climber should know both.
Both, yeah.
Yeah. And know when both are appropriate. And it's interesting because you were talking about doing the double ropes technique. I don't know what the proper way to say that is, but where you have two climb lines. And when I did that, I did one single rope and one double rope, because I figured there's advantages to having a single rope, and there's, if I'm doing a big limb walk, it'd be kind of nice to have a big double rope. So I would do one of each, and I'd be able to play, kind of play to the strengths of each system while I was climbing. And it was nice, there's times where you want one, times where you want the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the I guess etymology of double rope or single rope or doubled rope. Do you know that story?
No.
When I started talking about single rope on the ISA forum, and being a very ambitious but lazy kind of guy, I got tired of typing out doubled rope technique. So I first started saying, single rope technique and double rope technique. Well, then I read it on rope. Double rope technique is twin ropes. It's actually two ropes. So DRT isn't quite right. And so I'm typing away and I'm typing doubled rope technique. and I got tired of writing doubled rope technique. To be very clear that we're talking about one rope.
Uh-huh.
And then I had this idea. It's like, oh, type it as uppercase and then lowercase RT.
Okay.
Because I'm lazy,
I've
but
always,
ambitious.
I've never really known. I've known people refer to it as DDRT, or you read that. I never really knew what that second D was for, but it's the D at the end of double to like know that it's doubled rope technique. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was you.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it makes so much sense. It's funny how those things, I think me and Jamie have had that conversation. Why is it DDRT?
Yeah.
And to think it was just that simple the whole time.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out what that other D stands for.
And now it's MRS and SRS is kind of what people are referring to. Did you have anything to do with that?
No. And my tongue trips over that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Mine still does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes total sense.
It makes sense.
But it's just in my head one way, and a little bit of that old dog thing's going on. But I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's still space for it. Although I've had people that just get a little bit rabid about it. I'll say single rope technique, and then they just come unglued, and I'm going, whoa, calm down.
Yeah.
Calm down. We're not talking about.
That's
we're not talking about doing flush cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's not heretical. It's just, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
it's a sign of the industry being in a good situation when you can argue over moving rope technique versus double rope technique. You're not arguing over what a proper cut is or if you can top or not.
Right. Well, and something that I realized very early on with single rope was the ergonomic advantages of it. And having an achy back when I was in my early 30s that got squared away from a summer at the chiropractor, that I became real sensitive to that, and looking at how much better single rope is ergonomically, I could tell that my career, and anybody the sooner you started single rope, the longer climbing career you're going to have.
Yeah. It's amazing if
you
see someone hip thrust or body thrust side by side to someone rope walking. It's like, hit yourself in the forehead. Of course, that is better for your body, kind of thing.
And shoulders are the, people talk about having backs that hurt, but as I talk to guys that are my age who are now retiring, and we get together and we talk about that, and there's the generation before us, they're kind of hunkered over and they stand up and they creak their back and they straighten out from getting up in a chair. My generation, we're doing these shoulder shrugs, because shoulders hurt.
Yeah.
From ripping on chainsaws, drop starting chainsaws, foot locking, and yarding yourself up the tree with doing, foot locking, pulling yourself up the tree. It's like, don't, your shoulders are going to go to hell.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I have a bad habit of wearing just a foot ascender. I won't set up, a second ascender for rope walking, which is kind of, balances your muscles and stuff. So I got my left leg is way stronger than my other one, and I'm sure that's going to bite me in the butt later.
Yeah. But the stuff's available, and accepted, and it'll make people's careers longer in the decades length as well as in a weekly length.
Yeah.
And talking with people over the years that converted to start doing SRT and realizing that something that those of us that have been doing it for a while is like, the benefit's going to come Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Back in the old double rope techniques, Friday afternoon you're going, you know what, I'm beat. I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to probably sleep in tomorrow morning too.
Yeah.
Because you're just achy. Well, you convert to SRT, you're not using those, you're not aching. You're feeling like, you know what, I can go out and socialize on Friday because I've got energy left over.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of, welcome innovation in this industry. I like to look at it all because it does that. It saves your energy. A lot of things do. You find out what works for you, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
the main driving factor is efficiency, making stuff easier on your body, prolonging our careers. So
go ahead.
I think it's incredibly important to not shun innovation like all the way. Like, if you want a long career.
Yeah. I stopped over at the saw shop that I always dealt with. I hadn't talked to Jeff for a while, and just to see what he's doing and his plans and stuff. And I had to talk to him about battery saws.
Yeah.
And how him as a vendor and selling 3 or 4 different lines of saws and how they're working and how they're accepted. He says the same thing. It's like, he's trying, very few people are buying gas top handle saws.
Yeah, those electric ones are great.
Oh, they're so
they're
nice.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not pulling. You're not.
Yeah.
Your shoulder's not pulling the saw.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little ergonomic gain.
Yep, it's small. It's small, but over years, it's huge.
Yeah.
Well, and the industry over the last 20 years, it's been all these little small changes that have made the industry easier and easier. And I can't remember if we were talking about it on the rec climbing episode or if I was just thinking about it afterwards. But it's all those little changes that make it easier and easier that have made rec climbing something that's doable. It was much rarer to go rec climbing when you had to, hip thrust the whole way up, and you didn't have a pulley on your, double rope system. You just pull it down and push the knot up, pull it down,
Right.
You're not doing that
Yep.
for fun.
Yeah.
You're not like, hey,
Right.
Jamie, this weekend you want to go over to that tree and hip thrust up to the top of it? Yeah. And it's all those things that have made it accessible for a lot more people,
Yep. Yeah. It's and I'm happy with that. It has to do. You don't have to be a big bruiser to gorilla your way up the tree.
Yeah.
There's no need for that, and you shouldn't be doing that.
It's been really great talking with you, Tom. Is there anything else that you want to add to this? Well, let's put it this way. At the end of the episodes, we kind of do a little final thoughts. Usually we're kind of exploring the subject, and so we do a final thoughts on the subject. And unless there's something else you want to get into,
Maybe we'll just say, what's a message that you would like to get out to people about the industry, for the industry?
Well, I hope that there are people that are able to get in now and spend a lifelong career doing the work. Because I've had a lifetime of doing work that I love. I've absolutely loved every bit of work I've done with trees, from planting to storm work to teaching to cabling and bracing and everything else. So I've loved the work. I've had some jobs that some of them were stinkers, most of them were really good, but I feel so blessed to have had a lifetime of work that I love and cross paths with so many other people that have loved the work too. It's a privilege. It's a privilege.
Nice. Jamie, do you have any final thoughts from this episode?
Yeah, I'll say, kind of going off yours, the idea of longevity in this career is thanks to guys, people like you, Tom. I just want to say, thanks for all you've done for the industry. It's great meeting you over the phone here and talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's fun to see the enthusiasm and see the wanting to share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what this is all about. It came about when we were with COVID. We couldn't go to competitions, couldn't go to the ISA seminars and stuff, and we were trying to figure out how we could still kind of build a little community and network within the industry. So we're like, heck, we work together, so we kind of have our bubble, and we could try doing a podcast within that and just see where it goes. So, that's what it's all about. I think my final thoughts after hearing the stories you got and hearing about your career is just always try to learn something new. Always try to make yourself better today than you were yesterday. I'm kind of going back to, I can't remember who you said it, but, you know, if you're only a hack, if you're doing something you know is wrong and you're still doing it,
Yeah.
you know, we can all become better. So with that, I would say stay safe and watch your top knot.
Thanks, Tom.